Thank you. Good afternoon. I've got a question for you. I want you to think back to when you were 5 years of age and your parents had just bought a large appliance, like a stove or refrigerator, and your parents are all excited about the new appliance. And you're 5 and you're all excited about the boxes that it came in. So I want you to have a conversation for 30 seconds with the people around you and just let them know, what did you do with the box? Go. Okay. So how many forts? Yeah, great. How many houses? How many sleds? Who'd you put in the sled? Great. And what'd you go down? Stairs. The point is, this is your curiosity, and what's fascinating about being 5 is your curiosity is innate. And what's so much fun to me, since I work with children and then MBA students at the University of Virginia Darden Business School, is when I go and work with kids and I ask how many like to sing, every little hand goes up. How many like to dance? They start dancing. How many like to draw? They show me their pictures. When I go and ask my MBA students how many like to sing, well, let me ask you, how many like to sing? Okay? About 20%. How many like to dance? How many, if you could have 3 beers first, would you prefer dancing? Okay, all the hands go up. And how many sometime in your life have said, I have told people you're not an artist because I can't draw a straight line? And the point is, that's what rulers are for. That's how you draw straight lines. And what we find is that as an adult, we start telling people that we are not creative any longer, or we're curious. And the box, which was our friend when we were 5, becomes the silo. And we actually use that term, help, I need to think outside of the box. My point is, the box is your friends. Constraints are your friends. We need to think inside and outside of the box. And I love this quote from the new book called The Silo Effect. To master our silos, we need to realize how we unthinkingly classify the world around us each day and try to imagine alternatives. If we don't, we become blind to our own blindness. So what I really want to be talking about at lunch is blind spots. What are those things that, or solutions that we might miss, or challenges that we don't see? So I brought in a little video clip that might open up your mind about blind spots, especially from a technological point of view.
Emma. Huh? Emma.
Not anymore.
Emma.
Every day it's getting on my nerves.
Emma.
Oh, I'm
Emma.
begging you, please.
Emma.
So now you see what a blind spot is. So I want to try to show, how do you find these? How do you see what other people don't see? So if you're stuck, if you feel stuck in that box, in that silo, Mark Twain said it so well. You can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus. How do we go and spark that imagination that we had when we were 5? And one of the things is to borrow something that Einstein talked about. Einstein always said, look for a second right answer. He said, when the average adult is brainstorming, they stop too soon. Push for that second right answer, that third right answer. So I'm going to give you a little quiz out of 6th grade. This is in all of our McGraw-Hill 6th grade arithmetic books. What is unique about the following number? It's got all the numbers, right? Okay, and most of us would then move on. If you keep looking, and you might go, well, this could be a number of the gross national product of some country or something, and it's unique. It's got all the digits. But if you totally look at the numbers from a different perspective, and rather than 8 as the number 8, and you spelled out the word 8, whoops, it's in alphabetical order. 8, 5, 4, 9, 1, 7, 3. And what I find fascinating is that most of us, once we said, well, let's get all the numbers, we would move on, rather than going and trying to look at it from a different perspective. So, looking at things for that second right answer, sometimes you need to find an analogy to help you. So, that analogy a lot of times can come from looking from a different perspective. So I had a challenge about 10 years ago with St. Barnabas Hospital in Short Hills, New Jersey. And they wanted to brainstorm of how can we speed up patient flow through the hospital, especially through the emergency department. And I'm thinking, what analogy could I use that could speed things up and also be safe? And just one weekend, I happened to be flipping through TV channels, and I saw a NASCAR race, and I saw a pit crew. And I go, wow, could we think like a pit crew? What if NASCAR built a hospital? What would patient flow be like? So I got curious about it, and I decided to call a pit crew in North Carolina, got into this fascinating conversation with them, and here are the 5 S's of a pit crew: safety, speed, simplicity, self-confidence of your workforce, and shared vision. They became my partner. They came with me, we brainstormed, and now I've used that same analogy of 4 or 5 different hospitals, and I have doctors and nurses now going to pit crew camp and writing about it. Dr. Barry Silva, he was the CEO of American College of Physician Executives. He's been writing about it. He said, this is phenomenal. Again, it's safety, speed, simplicity. So that helps you get to look at things from the different perspective. So, okay, we're there. Look for a second right answer, look at it from a different perspective. I'm going to throw out the third thing Einstein said. And this is the most important. He said, always look for a different answer every year. He so much believed in that when he taught first and second year physics, in second year physics, he gave them the same final exam as from first year physics. And the students will say, Dr. Einstein, we already had this test. And he said, I know, but the answers are different this year. Think if you challenge yourself that way. I used to work for Disney. Think what's Disney thinking now because of Zika virus? Does that change anything? It's not just Brazil's thinking about, what's Disney's thinking about with their forecasts? So how do you go and why do we need to go and challenge ourselves to look at things from a different answer? Well, the Tao Te Ching says it all. They say you can't cross the same river because the water's moving. So I think ideas are moving. I think ideas don't travel in straight lines. So many people think they do. A lot of my friends and a lot of my students will come up and they go, yeah, I'm on this career path. And I'm going, well, that's actually going to be your career path. And are you agile enough? Are you flexible enough? Can you pivot? So I want to give you a model that really helps me understand with my clients to go and see the future. It's simple. It's a spiral. So let's go, and you see house calls there. Who came to our house 40 years ago? The doctor, right. The butcher. Milkman. Mailman, ice. Eggs. Charlie Chips. Mormons. Jehovah's Witness. Fuller Brush. Neighbors. Remember that old saying, borrow a cup of sugar? I don't even know my neighbors now. But the point is we had house calls, and the doctor came to our house. So as now we're talking about telehealth, as we're going back to the home where it should be, what I want to show is that's part of the spiral, because we went from house calls to bricks and mortar, to then wanting things quickly. Jiffy Lube, Prompt Med. But then we want it in bulk. So we created, in healthcare, we created HMOs, we created Costco's, we bought SUVs to fill up with stuff. And then the internet comes along and we get click and mortar. So you order online and so we always say, so what's next? We then, to understand what's next, we have to go back and think like Dr. Joseph Schumpeter, the Austrian economist in 1928, said that consumer behavior goes in a spiral opposite fashion, and everything goes back, however, evolves. My best example of that, being a guy, is leisure suits are now back. And they're at Nordstrom and they're called Smart Care. But they're just an evolution of what, remember those white leisure suits that the Bee Gees wore. So how do you see the future? Go ahead, click. One of the things is to go and look around. The future's already here. In opposites, Uber, a taxi service that has no taxis. Airbnb, a hotel that owns no real estate. WeChat, the largest phone company in the world, 1 billion users that isn't a telco. Alibaba, $14.7 billion in sales per day with no inventory. Netflix, who we love to watch, has no movie theaters. Interesting. Now, if you truly think in spirals, this is my brain. Uber will partner with an auto company. Maybe Tesla. Airbnb, I bet you, will partner with some hotels in some ways. Netflix, I bet you, will have some cinemas at some time. Because you know what Amazon is talking about now? Having bookstores, brick and mortar. So everything life isn't a pendulum. To me, that's pessimistic. Life is a spiral, and it evolves to an opposite and then goes to the next opposite and then goes to the next opposite. Did anyone here have Crystal Pepsi? Okay, way in the back, yes. Okay, Crystal Pepsi came 20 years ago when the American consumers said we want something clear to drink. And what that was is water. But Pepsi said, we will never sell water, so we are going to make a clear Pepsi. It did really well in blind taste test, which is stupid. You do a blind taste test on a color. It tasted like Pepsi, but was clear, and people said, this is terrible. And then Homer Simpson did a whole episode on it, and he called it, invisible cola. And then Jon Stewart did an episode on it, and he called it Crystal Meth Pepsi. Pepsi took it off the market and called up and said, okay, you got 3 days and we need a new drink. So I've got a virtual team, I've had them for 20 years, where we all just go and brainstorm over a weekend usually and come up with ideas. And what's our model? A spiral. I want to show you how we created their next drink in 5 minutes. And you drink it today. But I'm not going to give the secret yet. I'm going to let you invent it. So, if on the spiral of preservatives, the opposite would be, let's remove the preservatives from Pepsi. Who would want that? Okay, so you might call it Pepsi Health, and you might have to chill it. You might date code it, might charge more, might sell it at Whole Foods. 3 times the amount of preservatives. Military, survivalist. Remove the carbonation, fruit drink, easy. 6 times the amount of carbonation. Kids drink, I called it Pepsi Belch. I thought I would love it, kids would love it. It goes with Pop Rocks. Remove the caffeine, easy, but boring. Double the caffeine, right? Jolt Cola. Remove the sugar. Change the sugar to an energy drink, Gatorade, Sportade. Remove the water, candy, right? Why doesn't Pepsi make candy? Why don't they make syrup? Why don't they make powder? Why don't you able to bake with it? I mean, we cook with beer, why couldn't you cook with Pepsi? Sell water. No, we'll never sell water. Remove the color. Okay, you got Crystal Pepsi, you bombed. So thinking an opposite, what's the solution? Change the color. Make it darker. What's darker than Pepsi? 20 years ago. What's really dark? Coffee. What's really dark coffee called? Espresso. And who was getting hot 20 years ago? Starbucks. So in the first 5 minutes of our brainstorm, we said, let's team up with Starbucks and make a coffee drink and have Pepsi make it for them. And give it an Italian name, like Frappuccino. You didn't know Frappuccino was made by Pepsi, do you? Because for the first 5 years, we weren't allowed to tell anybody. And now Starbucks owns it outright, and I'm now allowed to tell the story. It came in 5 minutes. And it's the #1 selling drink at Walmart and Sam's Club. But the purchasing agent at Walmart said when we presented it to him, Bubba doesn't want a coffee drink. And you know what my response was? Because I live in opposites because I'm severely dyslexic. I said, Mrs. Bubba does. So my point is that if you understand a spiral, you can predict, not just predict, you can create the future. And that's what you're doing. Now, why am I putting the first cover of Playboy up there? Okay, here's my true confession. I've had a crush on Christy Hefner all my life because we're the same age and I just watched her with her father and all this stuff. And I said, boy, that would, and I had this wonderful opportunity to be at the same platform with her speaking several years ago. And we were having lunch after both of our talks, and she laughed and she said, so what's the opposite for us at Playboy? And I said, I bet you within 5 years you're going to remove the centerfold. What did they just do in January? Remove the centerfold. And what happened? Playboy.com just went PG-13 and 258% jump in visitors, average age drops from 47 to 30. It always happens. I'll bet my wallet every day. Whoops, come on, clicker, come on. Oop, we're having okay. So a friend of mine, Adam Grant, this is the coolest book out there. It's called Originals. He loves opposites. He said, divide into groups and each choose an assumption, a belief, or an area of knowledge that is widely taken for granted. Each group asks, when is the opposite true, and then delivers a presentation on their ideas. Just play with it as part of your strategic plan. Learn to see those blind spots. Another thing you can do is when you're going in saying, so what's telehealth going to be like in 2020? Good conversation. Or now we would say 2021 because of 5 years. The opposite would be, come on, clicker. What would we never look like in 2021? And then look and say, well, what's right about those nevers? And you will be amazed at what will just bubble out. And it's that flip from what would we never do or what's we never look like, and then say, well, what's right about it? That's what makes all the difference. And that's what most people can't. They can't make that flip. That I'm giving you the secret. It's just bet on it. So look for a second right answer. Look from a different perspective. Look for a different answer this year. We call that strategic curiosity. Now, when I first started teaching at Darden Business School in 1984, I wanted to call my course Curiosity. And the dean said, Chic, curiosity, that's a little too touchy-feely for us. So I said, well, I thought, I said, what if I put the word strategic in front of it? And he goes, oh, sounds fine now. So that anytime you want to sell something, just put strategic in front of it, you're good. Now I want to go and transfer. My passion now, and I'm going to talk to you in a little bit, my passion now is I want to teach elementary school kids how to become entrepreneurs. So we're creating something called the Waggy Labs. Waggy stands for What a Great Idea. And the reason why I want to do this is because we're removing so much from the kids' education. We're removing PE and art and music and all these different things. And for me, as a struggling kid in school that struggled with these rules, these were the rules when we went to school. Fill in the blanks. One right answer. Teachers always right. The answer is in the back of the teacher's edition, the thicker book. And I remember on my knees in second grade when I was being held back because I couldn't read. And my mother said, you know, son, you know, I was praying. And I said, Mom, you know, I just asked God, I hope I can find a copy of the teacher's edition because it's the only way I'm going to graduate out of class. And my point is, thank God, I never found that teacher's edition because I make my living challenging the back of the book. And the teacher, Miss Ferraldi, used to always say, Chicky, the answer's not on the ceiling. I agree. That's where the questions are. And to me, my best students are the ones with the best questions. That's what gets them, helps them challenge. And so our eyes have to move different ways when you're accessing information. They have to move up when you're visualizing. They move down when you're feeling or kinesthetic. They move right to left when it's being analytical. My whole thing, though, is that if your eyes move up, that's good, because you're visualizing that situation you're trying to discuss. So now I've got maybe about a half hour left with my presentation, and I got to determine, do I give you the advanced, the regular, or the remedial version of the rest of the presentation? So I'm going to give you a quiz from 5th grade that all of our kids have today, and if you've seen this before, remember, the answer is different today. So I'm going to put on a little music in a moment, and I want you to go and write down on a piece of paper when the music's over how many squares you see in that diagram. We're not talking about the blue. The blue is a rectangle, okay? So, and a rectangle is not a square. Squares have 4 equal sides. So I want you to look up there, and how many squares do you see? Go. Look for a second right answer. Look for a third right answer. Now, write down your answer on a piece of paper as if this was a true quiz. And once the answer is written down, share your answer as if you're getting ready to brainstorm with someone. And the true definition of a brainstorm, the word brainstorm comes from 1948, Dr. Alex Osborne, who said, people come together to discuss ideas, and they come up with more ideas and better ideas than any individual has. So share your answer with a couple of people and see if you can come up with more squares. Okay, how many are there? 27. We're at 27. 34. 34. Any more? We're at 34. So did you see the concept of looking for a second right answer? Did you first see 16, and then you saw 2 by 2s, and then you saw the 3 by 3s, and you started adding them up? I want to let you know what's the answer in the back of the 5th grade book, still in print today, 16. I wrote to the publisher who said you're not supposed to learn that there's more until 10th grade. So okay. And in 10th grade, you learn the formula for this, which is the sum of 4 squared plus 3 squared plus 2 squared plus 1 squared equals 30. So in 10th grade, the answer is supposed to be 30. And okay, and I thought it was 30. So I put the exercise in my book. And I got challenged about 4 years ago now by a 9-year-old who said, Mr. Thompson, 30 is only correct on paper. You're using a PowerPoint presentation. And I said, son, well, what's the difference? And he said, pixels. And I said, what do you mean? He said, all the lines up there are composed of pixels, and pixels are square. I said, how do I see a pixel? He said, magnify your screen by 400%, turn the line on an angle. I said, son, how many pixels are there? And he said, what's the resolution of your monitor? I don't know. And then another kid said, what kind of laptop do you have? I got a MacBook Air. He goes, well, then you got 3D on there, don't you? I go, I don't know. And then we started talking about that. You see, we would have an adult argument, is it 27 or 34? And who's right? It's in the millions. Because you got to look for a second right answer. You got to look at things from a different perspective. And the answer is different today. Now with holography, what you saw this morning, does that change it? What if that was holographic square? I don't know. So this is why Jim Collins says the hidden ingredient in exceptional leadership is curiosity. Do you know what Jim Collins, the great author, has on his desk? Curious George. Just to remind him. Einstein never ever said he was creative. He always just said he was passionately curious. He said, here's his definition of passionately curious. He said, if the average person is looking for a needle in a haystack, the average person stops when they find the needle. The passionately curious person looks for everything in the haystack that can act like a needle. Whoa. So, how many of you are traveling? Majority of you. How many of you forgot something to bring along on your trip? So you have to adapt, whether it's the finger toothbrush or, for me, recently, I always wear cufflinks when I teach because I just love that piece of putting on the cufflink and all that. And I forgot my cufflinks. So you're stuck in a hotel room. You got 5 minutes. What can act like a cufflink? Go. Paperclip. Binder folder. Good. Dental floss. Chewing gum. Hey, I'm not being critical. Oh, yeah. Yep, the bandit. I unscrewed the dresser drawer knobs with my credit card. I went across the street, gave my talk, and my client comes up in break and goes, okay, we're all talking. Those are the largest cufflinks we've ever seen. I just said, yeah, they're dresser drawer knobs. I said, when you got resource constraints, the whole flight back to Charlottesville, I'm thinking I was 5. I was on a high. And then recently I forgot my cufflinks in a talk, and I had to use shower curtain rings. What the heck? I'm now getting people sending me pictures of their, what we call hacked cufflinks. Tom Friedman says, here's where ideas come from. Ideas come from a curiosity quotient and a passion quotient that are high. And I just love this story about Deborah Adler, who's unfortunate, her grandmother misread her husband's pain medicine by mistake and took the wrong meds for a week. That means she also didn't take the right meds. She wound up in the hospital. Deborah Adler heard the story, started crying, and said, Grandma, I'm a design student at Pratt Institute in New York City. I'm going to design a pill bottle that any senior citizen, anybody can read. That night, She's with her friends in a diner, like a Seinfeld diner, and notices an upside-down bottle of ketchup. Cool. Gives her an idea. Look at the labeling on there. Look at the fact that there's a flat top now because the Heinz ketchup is upside down. Could she put, what if her pill bottles were upside down? And then she brushes her, whoops, where's this clicker? She then goes and brushes her teeth with an Oral-B, and she noticed color-coded rings. And the next day in class, she invents that, which Target picks up, and CVS now just bought it from Target. And it's won the award 2 years ago of the best new healthcare product for saving lives. And the big question to me is, why didn't the pharmacist create this? Because it required a passion quotient and a curiosity quotient, as Thomas Friedman said. So my question to you is, what's your pill bottle? What's the thing that you see in healthcare that you go, why do we do it this way? What are the blind spots? And I just want to tell you now what my pill bottle is that I've been sick all my life. I was born very premature. I was put in an incubator. I was wrapped in a towel, and a nurse said I looked like a chicken. So that's how I got Chic as a name. I didn't go to school until first grade because I was sick. I got IBS Crohn's, which I now have severe osteoporosis, T-score minus 3.6. Just had prostate out. It's been kidney stones. It's been an interesting life challenge. But you know what my pill bottle's been my whole life? I love to draw cartoons. And my whole passion has been drawing cartoons to educate people about illnesses, either when I was as a kid or even up to today. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Because what do you think my father said to me when I told him my goal was to become a cartoonist at Walt Disney and teach people about healthcare? Get real, right. Yeah, look, hey, you know, it's like joining the NFL. Yeah, you're really going to be. My father had a 7th grade education. He said, son, just get a job, make some money. So fortunately, 3 houses down was a cartoonist named Rube Goldberg. He was my neighbor on Long Island, and he used to draw. He created a mousetrap game, which I used to be able to watch, and he said, man will always find a complicated means to perform a simple task. It's fascinating. But here's my memory of Rube. He drew me this cartoon when I was 10 years old. And I asked him his secret to drawing. And he said, my technique is to go from A to B using all of the letters. And I just loved it. And so I listened to my father. I did not become a cartoonist, even though I had this great mentor, but I listened to my dad. And I decided to go to University of Delaware to become a chemistry major, because my father thought I should become a scientist because Sputnik was sent up in 1958 and the US needed scientists. So in 1969, I got called into the office by my advisor who said, Dr. Riston, who said, Chic, I was in my 3rd year and I was still on academic probation. And my advisor said, Chic, I got bad news for you. You will never get a job with DuPont. And because see, everyone who went to University of Delaware would get a job at DuPont. And I said, well, why not, Dr. Riston? And he said, well, I see that you failed German. DuPont required 2 years of German to be there as a chemist. And I said, yeah, I really struggle with languages. So I see you failed English. Well, yeah. And then he said, I see you failed history. You failed history of Delaware, which was the easiest course in whole school. What was it, 8 a.m.? You know? And I go, well, Dr. Riston, they didn't know the word dyslexia in 1969. So Dr. Riston said, I got advice for you, Chic. Drop out. Go get a job. Work in a manufacturing plant or something like that. You love to play tennis. And then go to the military because you're in ROTC and you're in the Rangers. So I dropped out. and I got drafted in 1969, which is the first year of the lottery, and I failed the medical physical. So the Army didn't want me, Delaware didn't want me, and I got a job at Pepperidge Farm Bread in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and I was a raisin scraper on the raisin bread line. People stepped on the raisins during the day, and I scraped them off in second shift. And the good news about working second shift is I could drink beer when I was done and then play tennis the next morning to get over my hangover. I played tennis every day at University of Delaware courts in Newark, and one day on a court, I met a gentleman who was looking for a pickup game. I'm an extrovert. I said, hi, come on, join me, let's play. His name was Bill. He was about 30 years older than me, and I kept asking him questions like a 5-year-old kid. You know how 5-year-olds ask the word why 65 times per day? So I kept saying, so he said, I said, Bill, how come you're able to play tennis during the day? I mean, And he goes, well, I just quit my job. I go, that's cool, where'd you work? DuPont. Oh, are you a chemist? Nope, chemical engineer. Well, why'd you quit? Well, I created this product and they couldn't see any uses for it. I said, well, what's the product? He goes, well, you wouldn't know. I said, no, tell me. He says, well, it's polytetrafluoroethylene. I go, well, it's Teflon. He goes, how'd you know that? I said, well, I'm a chemist that can't speak German. And we got to play. And once I saw his product, his last name was Gore, and it was Gore-Tex. So he hired me as his first chemist in 1969. How does that happen? I don't know. Curiosity. It's not luck, it's curiosity. It's asking questions. So what's my job assignment? He said, well, every Friday, come into my office and run this thing called a brainstorm. I go, what's a brainstorm? Find out. So every Friday, we would run brainstorms. And the first couple of months didn't go very well. We weren't in clothing or anything. I mean, we were in industrial applications. We had this sheet of polytetrafluoroethylene that we could control the porosity of it. And we go, So we didn't have any breakthroughs. And then I'm playing tennis and I get a strangulated hernia. I wind up in the hospital. And the surgery goes bad because also I didn't tell you I'm a bleeder. So the surgery goes bad. I have to stay in the hospital for a week. And the patient next to me is in worse shape. He has a broken back. And I'm talking to him. And he's developing decubital ulcers, bed sores, from lying in the same position. That's a product. I could put Gore-Tex on his bed. So I got them to let me out of the hospital. I was so excited. I drove back to the lab, and I took a piece of Gore-Tex, went back to the hospital, put it under them. I didn't get any legal approval or anything like that. It worked really well, and the next day, the nurse called me up, director of nursing, said, we got bad news. The patient just slipped out of bed. And I said, I had failed physics. It's called low coefficient of friction. And I go, okay. And so I went into Bill Gore's office, and I told him about it. And he didn't beat me up. He didn't go, boy, what a stupid idea. We're going to get sued. He said, when something goes wrong, you got to ask what went right. I go, what? I didn't understand that. That was my first time I learned about opposites. He said, when something goes wrong, you got to ask what went right. And I said, well, what do I do? He says, go back to the hospital, ask any of the nurses, any of the people, what's right about the Gore-Tex? I went back to get the sheet, and I noticed a rectangular piece was cut out of it. I said, what's someone do? And the nurse said, the orthopod, the orthopedic surgeon, wanted to know if he could make a face mask out of it. Why do they want a face mask out of it? Well, the surgeon face mask, they have to change so often because it loses moisture and it starts becoming no longer a bacterial barrier. I said, gosh, we can make it a viral barrier if you wanted. And guess what? That was our first medical product. And I left Gore and went to Johnson & Johnson, became a new medical product developer, and spent years there designing products for total hip replacement. All the gowning materials and the draping materials and all that were Gore-Tex. And you know the bed sheet that I just told you about? I'm going to try to tell this, but this one chokes me up. I got a call 3 years ago from folks at Gore and said, you know that bed sheet? I said, yeah. We just re-released it. We just put it into the market, and test market, at Brooke Army Hospital for burn patients, for our wounded warriors. And I go, oh my God. It took 40 years. But that's the power of an idea. So stick to it. If you have an idea, save it. You never know when that opportunity can come. So one of my friends is a photographer at National Geographic, and he talks about this in a little bit different way. His name is DeWitt Jones. And every time he goes out to take a photograph, he always takes one photograph that day that celebrates what's right with the world. And he said, that's, again, that thing of, he might be in a war-torn zone, but he also takes a photograph of what's right with the world. So I want to now talk about, I've talked about ideas, but I want to talk about briefly, what can kill ideas? All new ideas must pass through 3 stages. First dismissed as nonsense, then rejected as against religion, and finally acknowledged as true with the proviso from opponents they knew it all along. That's from the father of embryology, who said over 100 years ago. And so many of those ways of killing an idea starts with these 2 words, yes, but. And I so much have learned about yes, but in my life that I collected 2,500 yes, buts, wrote a whole book about it, and then found out that yes, but is a major component of improv. So I then went to Second City and studied improv, because improv is opposites. When you want to have a dialogue in improv, you do yes and you build and you invite. When you want to stop a dialogue, you say but, and you give an excuse for ending the dialogue. How much of brainstorming is yes and versus yes but? You need to start off with the and build and build and build, and then you can converge with the but. Here, so yes and is a powerful component to learn. And at UVA, we actually brought in Alan Alda, remember from MASH fame, who now teaches improv to researchers. And he came into UVA and did a workshop for our researchers, because a lot of our researchers, I mean, they're all brilliant, a lot of them don't collaborate. We thought improv might be a great way. So I just throw out, it's just a great way for your group to learn about improv. Because here are some of my favorite yes buts. Yes, but heavier than air flying machines are impossible, Lord Kelvin said before the Wright brothers. Yes, President Grover Cleveland said yes, but sensible and responsible women do not want the right to vote in 1905. But who the hell wants to hear actors talk in 1927? But there's no reason for an individual to have a computer in their home. Digital equipment. Where's digital equipment now? But groups with guitars are on the way out. This is a week before they went on the Ed Sullivan Show. Where's Decca Records today? So, I challenge you. What are the, I call them killer phrases. What are the yes buts that you might say when you hear an idea? Not just with your colleagues, with your kids, at the kitchen table. And then how can you diffuse those killer phrases? If you know you're going to go and hear, well, yes, but it's not in the budget, how do you diffuse that? You got to figure out, well, what kind of prototype can there? Where can I borrow? How can I work something different here? So I have some favorite friends, and when I have an idea, I go to one of my friends named David, because he's a CPA, Darden MBA, Arthur Anderson accountant, and he is what I call a machine gun butter. He can give me 5 yes buts just like that. Bam, 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 but. And yeah. Or no. I get him to give me 5 yes buts. There's my strategic plan. I just got to get over them. It works perfect. And he loves me. I'm on the board of his company because he wants to go and stretch, and he goes and does the converge. So I just want to, as I wind down, I want to tell you I got to live my dream. I sent my cartoons to Disney in 1976, and I got hired to be on the Epcot team on the Health Pavilion. And I'm in my first brainstorm at Disney, and my boss says, Chic, you're brand new, it's your first week, sit in the back of the room. I go, why? And he said, well, because you can't sit up, we sit by seniority, and you're not allowed to participate in our brainstorms until you've been here a year. And I go, why? And he says, because you haven't gotten the pixie dust yet. And I'm saying in my brain, Mickey is a cartoon. But I'm sitting in the back. Our facilitator is Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, because he lived out in LA. And we're brainstorming what technology should we use at the Health Pavilion to distribute health information to consumers. And someone said, well, 16 millimeter, oh, that'd be too expensive. Super 8? Okay, well, okay. Stereo view, remember? It goes click, click, click. Comic books, okay. Someone said, Betamax. Betamax had just been released. And immediately, this tall man in the front row, my boss, that's our president, stands up and says, our cartoons will never go on videotape as long as I'm president of Disney. What was he scared of? Copyright infringement. People copying the Disney film, because back in the 70s, remember, we only released Disney movies every 7 years, and then for limited release. Disney was all about scarcity, not abundance. And they held true to that until 1984, when Card Walker was asked to retire because Disney was going down the toilet, and they brought in Michael Eisner from Paramount, and the first thing he did was allow Disney to go to videotape. It was fascinating. I stayed 4 more months, and I quit, because I got to finally present an idea to the sales team and all that, because I had met a fellow playing tennis. Tennis has been good to me. I met this fellow playing tennis whose father was a thoracic surgeon in Cincinnati who had come up with a life-saving technique. The kid told me about it. I called his father, the doctor. The doctor explained it to me. I tried a self-version of it. I go, whoa, this works. And I said, this would be perfect to draw a poster for this technique and give it out at the Health Pavilion. We would save lives around the world. I told my boss shot it up the chain. It got rejected because the doctor's name was on the technique. I go, okay. So I called the doctor up. I told him I'd been shot down. The doctor said, well, all I need is a poster. Would you draw it? And I said, yeah, I'll draw it. So his name was Henry Heimlich, the Heimlich maneuver. And he challenged me. He said, do you want to draw Mickey Mouse or do you want to save lives? Because he knew my passion about healthcare. And I said, I want to save lives. He said, I'll become your first client. And then he started lining me up with doctors around the world. And I left Disney and started Creative Cartoon Company. And my first movie was an animated penis putting on a condom. It was called Peter Rises Again. It was for Dr. George Deniston, the head of the International Planned Parenthood. And then he calls me up one day and he goes, oh, we're loving it. It's all over the world, and there are parts where there's no electricity. We can't show the cartoon. I go, that's easy. I did a flip book. So, and then people would flip it backwards, forwards, upside down. My next movie was Herpy, the new VD around town. And then we got to produce the first educational program in the world on AIDS, called AIDS Alert. My partner in that was Rita Mae Brown and Dr. Rich Keeling at UVA, who is the head of student health. And whoops, it keeps going Okay. So, my challenge to you then, as I wind down, is, do you see the opposites? Do you see the curiosity? And so our challenge is, how do you go and we got the curiosity, how do we have the courage? And how do we get the connection to make all this work? So what I think you can do is you can go, and when you're facing a challenge, you can say, what would I never do? And then look at those nevers and say, is there a possibility here? Because I want to tell you my challenge. A year ago, I was going through I think it's called the Prometheus test. That was the big biologic test, said 91% chance of Crohn's, and they was changing my meds on that, and my osteoporosis was going crazy. I had fallen and broken my right elbow. It didn't heal. The surgery went bad. I haven't touched my face in 2.5 years now. I had locked shoulder, 5 kidney stones. You try to go and capture a kidney stone when you got one arm in a sling and the other arm, and they give you a strainer, and they said, capture the stone so we can tell. I said, Doc, I got one arm. How do I capture this thing? Let's invent something. And we started figuring out how to, so I did. I captured it because I created something. But I was losing it. And I went to my dean and I said, I think I'm going to retire. And he said, I said, so he said, what are you going to do in retirement? I said, I don't know. I think I'm going to go, I want to go back to what I did when I was with Disney. For the part of Disney I enjoyed, I used to love just going and doing assemblies and teaching kids how to draw Mickey Mouse and stuff like that. And he goes, why don't you teach them how to become entrepreneurs? You think you can teach elementary school kids to be entrepreneurs? So I just started playing with it and started doing the research. I went into boys and girls clubs. I went into elementary schools. Those kids are eating it up. We now have 10 employees. We've raised $2 million. It's a nonprofit. It's called Waggy Labs. 4 of my team are leaving for Ghana in 4 weeks, and they're setting up Waggy Labs in elementary schools in Ghana. We're then going to South Africa. We're going to India. We're going into Montessori schools. We're going to Boys and Girls Club. We're going in the brand new YWCA in Chicago on the west side. University of Chicago, Illinois is teaming up. So universities are partnering with us then to work with the kids. We got Princeton is working with us. UVA, of course, is working with us. University of Texas is working with us. And everyone is saying, gosh, no one's ever thought about teaching entrepreneurship to elementary school kids. And I go, yeah, it sort of was a blind spot, wasn't it? It was even blind to me because I don't have kids. I'm divorced and I don't have kids. And so when I thought about my retirement, I don't have grandkids to think about. You know what I have now? We are funding what we're going to do with the $2 million. We're going to fund 8,000 kids' ideas at $250 an idea. We started a virtual competition, and the virtual competition is the exact opposite of Shark Tank. It's called Guppy Tank, because we live in opposites. And so we've created, how we teach in entrepreneurship, we've created a card game. So I looked at what's the most popular adult card game? Ideas Against Humanity. So what's our card game? Ideas for Humanity. And that's my retirement. 8,000 ideas. I had to come to terms that my kids are my ideas, my grandkids, and then mentoring kids around the world to go and teach this process. That's why I say, what is your pill bottle? That will spark your curiosity. And then also, if you face a challenge, like the biggest challenge that I faced, I would say, was trying to get my mother to tell me what did she want for Christmas. What do moms always say? Nothing. So 23 years ago, I went home to Cape May, New Jersey to be with my parents. My parents were in their 80s. And I'm at the Thanksgiving table, and I'm saying to my mother, "What do you want for Christmas?" And she says, again, "Nothing." I pressure her. I said, "Mom, come on, you gotta want something." She comes up with a meat thermometer. My father comes up with a wood-burning kit for carving ducks. I'm going, oh, great. My brother says, "Why can't we go on a trip?" And my mother says the first, "Yes, but." "Larry, that we can't go on a trip. Dad gets constipated." Okay. See, we're not allowed at my family to talk about constipation, or I would go, "Dad, what are 10 things we can do to overcome your constipation?" "Prunes, give me a list." I'm not allowed to talk about it. I mean, he probably has IBS, might even have a version of Crohn's too, but oh well. So I said, "Dad, I'd like to buy you new clothes," because here was the part. My father had cancer and he was losing a lot of weight. I said, "Dad, I'd like to buy you new clothes." And my father said his first, "Yes, but." "Chick, that's a great idea, but I wear the same clothes every day. Plaid pants and plaid shirt." Okay. Oh. So I'm getting up from the table. My mom makes me promise I'll just buy them a meat thermometer and a wood-burning kit. And it hits me. Now's the time for the opposite technique. So I said, "Mom, just kidding around, Mom, what would you never, ever, ever want for Christmas?" And just like this, she said, "A bikini." My father spit food out of his mouth. We started laughing. And I said, "Mom, let's make a list of 10 things we would never want." We made a list: a new husband, new car, new house, on and on, jet skis, whatever. We made a list. And on that list, I put that list on a refrigerator door, and I challenged my parents and my brother and I, as we walked past that refrigerator door, to see if we could flip a never into an opportunity. And on that list was a computer. Again, this is 23 years ago. And my mom kept saying, "We would never want a computer." And we kept thinking, what would be right about that? And then we thought about genealogy. Because my mom was on a walker. She had severe osteoporosis, and she couldn't go to the library. And she loved doing genealogy. So here was our surprise. Meat thermometer, wood-burning kit, and a Hewlett-Packard 286 Vectra computer, modem, monitor, in the family room. It didn't go well. What kind of learning environment? I was 44 at the time. What kind of learning environment do you think I created? Terminally serious. I yelled at them when they put coffee cups next to the keyboard. I looked for surge suppressors. And I expected them to learn word processing on Christmas Day. At the end of Christmas Day, my mother was so frustrated, she said, "Chick, would you move the computer to your bedroom?" And I said, "Mom, why?" And she said, "Well, it doesn't go with our furniture. And it's got a lot of wires." I said, "Okay." And as I flew back to Charlottesville the next day, I'm just going, boy, that didn't work. My brother's mad at me because he split the cost. And we didn't talk about it until April 10th of the next year, when I got in the mail the first letter that I've ever received from my dad. And here's what it says. "Dear Chick," and it was typed off of the computer. "Dear Chick, we went to a New Year's Eve party and told all the people at the New Year's Eve party what a stupid present you bought us for Christmas. Everybody agreed because we're all the same age. But the neighborhood kids heard about the first computer on the block in Cape May. 8-year-old kids came over to my parents' house. 8-year-old kids taught my 80-year-old parents how to use the computer. Do you see the opposites? The point of all of this is after my father's death, which was the next month, I had to move my mother to assisted living. What do you think she wanted in her little living room? The computer and all the neighborhood kids. What did the kids see an opportunity to teach all the women in the nursing home how to order presents for them from Land's End and LLB. They were on fire. And my mom lived 2 more years. And I thank God she had something to do and capture, and all those kids there. Do you see the opposites? So you got homework. What have you said to your family? Well, I just heard about this thing about what would we never do. I know we always go do this for vacation during the summer. Let's make a list of 10 things we would never, ever do over the summer and put it on a refrigerator door and see if we could walk by it, past it, and flip it to something. You will be amazed of the fun that you'll have. I every year go and say a New Year's resolution, what would I never do in 2017? And 6 years ago, I put on that list, I would never become a bodybuilder at Gold's Gym, because I'm 125 pounds. I looked at that and I said, you know, that's the weirdest one. I got to do the opposite. I went to Gold's Gym. I got a trainer. I'm still working out at Gold's Gym. And my workout partner is 360-pound ex-UVA football player, and we're called the Fly and the Windshield. And I met a whole bunch of people that I would have never, ever met. And it keeps me in shape, especially with the osteoporosis. So in closing, Plato said it best. I never read Plato, I heard this on NPR. But Plato said, human beings strive to achieve immortality. And there's 3 ways to achieve immortality. One way is by having kids. Second way is by planting trees. And the third way is by creating ideas and help make them happen. Go forth. Achieve immortality. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.